gave a talk on Don't Kill the Messenger, how to deliver successful research readouts. So welcome, Justyna.
Hi, everyone. It's nice to be here.
Great. Oh, are you actually in an office? Oh no, it is a house, is it?
No, no, it's my room.
Oh, okay. It's a lot more plans than I have in mind. Lovely.
I love plants. I think a lot of people, especially during pandemic, got in love with plants, and yes, I'm one of them.
Excellent. No, looks very nice. Um, so yeah, so just in terms of your talk, one of the things that I really liked was, I have this experience as well, that nobody really challenges just for the sake of challenging. They have a background reason, and they might not tell you what it is, but they have a reason, and you need to kind of get to their underlying motives, or otherwise you're not going to get through why they're objecting. So I found that very useful. Um,
Absolutely. I think as UX designers, we think that our primary goal is to understand the users, but it's good to use the same techniques on our clients or stakeholders, and also delve deeper and to understand like where are they coming from, what are their goals, and especially around the user research readouts, user testing, and the whole project. So I think the more we know about clients and stakeholders as much as we know about our users, the easier it's going to be to craft this message, to find this like middle ground between those two groups.
right. Yeah, as I think said earlier, it's human-centered design because it's not just purely the users, it's also the stakeholders.
Exactly.
So let's make it real. Can you give us an example of a particular issue, a nervous Nancy, say, raised, and how you dealt with that?
Absolutely. I had a couple of nervous Nancy's in my career, and I think it's also okay. It's like, with experience, you can also, already see who might be this nervous Nancy in your stakeholder group or in the client group. So, for example, I had a situation when even before having the research readout, one of the nervous Nancy was telling me that, you know what, Justina, research is all good and fun, but let's just, not do it. You are a designer, aren't you? Can you just please build a product, right? And you're thinking, okay, that's a challenge. That's quite a big of a challenge. And I could be telling the nervous Nancy all the good reasons why we should do the user research, what's the benefit and stuff like that. But the first thing that you need to discover, that I wanted to discover, is like, why sudden change of importance, why we were discussing that let's do the user research in the first place, and now it's like 180 degrees of a change. So I had a sit down with nervous Nancy and said, like, look, we have changed our priorities. What's happening? Maybe I can help, maybe the team can help. And the nervous Nancy said that actually she has a lot of pressure from the board to show some results. And she just thought, she's doing this UX project for the first time. And she just thought that why waste like 4 weeks, let's say, on the user research when we can just build it straight away. And that is where she was coming from. So, just having this conversation, as you have just mentioned, from my presentation, that nobody challenges without the reason. And without having this conversation, I would not be even able to understand where she's coming from. And I could just see her as the challenging stakeholder, and have a very different approach. But once sitting down and discovering, okay, that's the issue, then you can absolutely always find, well, I hope, the middle ground. For example, I shortened research readout to 2 weeks instead of 4 weeks, and we managed to show this results to the board. So, there are so many different also examples during the presentation when you're thinking of that you're presenting one challenge and you're talking about one challenge like this dog, right? But then you just open the floor for the questions, and the first questions that come to you, and you realize that actually the stakeholders have misunderstood it, or like, they have their own idea of what we just discussed, what is the challenge. So if you follow, those steps that I have shared with even before presenting the research readout, you're going to minimize those conversations during the research readouts when you just discover that you're not on the same page, you're not talking about the same dog or about the same challenge. Yeah.
Great. I'm going to throw in one because I've personally experienced this. Like, I loved your approach and your technique, But what about the case where the stakeholder just won't engage? So I've had a situation where like I can't do the one-on-ones because they just won't meet with me. I can't try to get to their underlying needs, and they're dismissive of the approach. So have you any experiences with that, and how do you deal with that?
I unfortunately also had those experiences in my life. And, what I've learned from those is that not to take it personally. It's not that you as, Rory or me as Justyna is being challenged as a person, but there's something else, right? And in those kind of situations, when I see that no matter what I say, no matter how much preparation I have before the presenting the research readout, they don't want me to say that, or they don't want me to present it, And then of course, like this identity crisis as a UX designer might happen. You might ask yourself, like, wow, am I betraying myself if I'm not gonna, as a designer, if I'm not gonna say it, or if I say it differently, how the stakeholders want. And sometimes it is worth losing one little battle to win the war. And I had those conversations when I remember in the beginning of the project, stakeholders were just like not having it. They were having their favorite people that they trusted present some things, and me, newcomer, saying like, I'm gonna create this great research and you're gonna love it, showing the challenges that they might not be prepared to hear, and not allowing me to even talk about it. And taking this whole journey, let's say of 6 months, of building this trust, building this relationship, and only after the 6 months, they for them to say like, we just want Justyna to present it. We trust her now, and it's okay to understand it in the beginning. Like, okay, sometimes you just need to lose the battle to win this like bigger war, to build this trust. It takes time. Not every stakeholder is like has the same mindset as you, and it's also absolutely okay. Sometimes it just like takes a lot of patience, a lot of also like self work, and understanding that's nothing that much, hopefully, about you. It's just different person, I would say, and it takes time to build this relationship and trust.
Yeah, I'm just going to throw in an example because it made me think of the example where I watched your talk. I was
Yeah.
once working with a guy, and when we were working together, he was so supportive and he was really engaged. But then every time we went to a kind of a stakeholder meeting or a big get together with stakeholders from across, he was very negative. And we just couldn't understand it, couldn't figure out why is he so positive when we're meeting in one-on-one and then so negative in these group situations.
Mm-hmm.
And we asked him what his motive, like what was he afraid of, or what was like, we dug into it, and he said he likes the work we're doing, and he knows that we're kind of an iterative team, so that once we've solved that problem enough, we'll move on to the next problem. So he wants to make everyone else think his problem hasn't been solved. So he loves working with us, and then just doesn't want anybody else to think that it's going well.
Wow. Well, that's an insight. Never had this situation, but yeah, but that's, as you said, like nobody challenges without the reason. And maybe that person really enjoyed working with you and just wanted to continue. And actually kind of like maybe it's different situation, but like different outcome, but similar situation when a person, sometimes it also happens that a stakeholder or a client is super friendly, like with you or on one-to-ones or the team stand-ups. But then when it comes to the bigger discussions with the bigger stakeholder groups, they are a little bit dismissive, And a good way to mitigate those kind of scenarios or situations is to involve that stakeholder in the creation of an output, right? So that their voice is part of the solution, or I don't know, their recommendation is on the presentation or within the prototype, so that it kind of like, makes them also vouch for it, for what you're presenting. But of course, as you have just mentioned, it so much depends on the reason behind why people are challenging. If they just want you to stay on the project, it's like a totally different conversation than if they're just challenged for some other reason.
Great. Well, thank you very much for your time and the talk. Really enjoyed it. And if anybody has any questions, do throw them into the Ask the Speaker panel.